What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, one of the content creators over here at the POD YouTube channel, joined once again by one of the writers over on the Pride of Detroit website, Morgan Canon. Morgan, what's going on, man? Really good to be able to catch up with you and do another video today.
Yeah, man. Shout out Netflix for giving us some content to talk about because we're like what? It's July 16th right now, evening of July 16th. So the Lions are 4 days away from rookies reporting for training camp. A bunch of teams already did today, like a handful of them. So it's about to be that time, and thank God.
It's like
You know,
it's exciting that we're that close to training camp. On the other hand, I'm like kind of panicking because I feel like there's so much content that I'm behind on, like as far as like
yeah.
getting videos out and stuff like that. So this is going to be a very interesting week for me because outside of this video, I definitely got a couple more that I gotta knock out before training camp kicks off. But like you mentioned earlier, we are here to talk about the Netflix series Receiver and really just talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown and what Netflix was able to put together in a really interesting type of like docu-series type of, behind the scenes look that honestly, Morgan, outside of Hard Knocks, like you don't see the NFL do a lot of things like this. So it's really cool to see, them focusing on a group of players and give us this kind of behind the scenes look and giving us an opportunity to learn more about some of these star players in the league.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm glad you made that point because, like, it is a new thing, a relatively new thing for the NFL to give like some of this unprecedented like in season access. Like, Hard Knocks has been going on forever, like since we were kids. I think like the first season was like the 2000 Ravens, I want to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been going on for a minute now, but like this sort of like Netflix style where they follow them in season and they're embedded. And from what Amon-Ra and the rest of the guys like Kittle and them said, it wasn't too invasive. They didn't feel like it. It was done well. I want to say they used the same. Netflix might have contracted the same people that did like Hard Knocks for like NFL Films and everything and HBO. So it looks like they got it down to a science, and it's really good content, man. Because like you said, it gives us an inside like look, like what kind of person are they? Like are these players? Like how are they with their family and their friends? So I liked it. I really enjoyed it. Ripped through it pretty quickly there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
glad it's
not as
almost
quick
football
as I
season.
did. I took the Jeremy Reisman approach, which is like you just
Yeah.
watch the player that you have to like talk about. So I still got to go back and rewatch the series because I pretty much just watched all the Amon-Ra St. Brown parts, um, outside of a couple moments where the Lions were playing the Raiders or the Vikings. Like I only got like a small sample size of some of the other players, so definitely need to go back and do a rewatch on the entire season.
Yeah, it's worth it. I know we were talking about it, but like it's not fun how much I liked guys like Justin Jefferson, like
Mm-hmm.
just a big like hilarious kid, loves to eat candy, plays video games, seems really low key, like has his family very much involved, and then just an absolute menace. Like best receiver in football for my money, hands down. Like
Yeah.
and yeah, there's a couple like you everyone likes Kittle. He's funny. Debo's got a good sense of humor and like an interesting personality. And yeah, I just enjoyed it. Like, definitely favored the Lions parts, some more than others. But there's other aspects too. Really like Devontae Adams. Very glad he's no longer in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Sad, that's nice. It'd be cool if Justin Jefferson would no longer be in Minnesota one day too. But we'll see if we get there.
I
But
mean, it helps
yeah,
when you have an Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? And so
exactly.
I think with that being said, like I think we're kind of already kind of getting to it, but like what were your overall thoughts of the show, even whether it's just the Amon-Ra St. Brown parts or just what Netflix was able to put together as a whole? Like how did you like again, how did you come away from just watching the entire series?
Well, I think they're perfecting their craft. Like it was better than I really enjoyed the quarterback series, and it's not like there was a bunch of players on that series that I was really a big fan of, but they do it so well, and they like splice together. You don't get too tired of one team if you're just a neutral watcher. They splice it together pretty well, but you can tell they're getting better. At the production, right? Like the production value is getting a
Mm-hmm.
lot better. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. Hopefully they'll keep this going because this has got to be a cash cow for them, and it comes at a really dead part of the off season. If they can time it up like that, then why not keep this thing going, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I think like the last thing that you were just saying, like it does come at a perfect time in the season where like you're still a couple weeks out from training camp, so you do get a little bit of hard knocks. Like that typically starts like I think that started a week or two before this dropped, but it gives you something different. It gives you something where if you're not interested in the Hard Knocks team, which I'm not watching Hard Knocks this year because the Lions aren't in it, so I'm not watching it. um, but it gives you something else to be invested in. I think that was one of my biggest takeaways is that it was kind of a double-edged sword for me, Morgan, where I'm not a big reality TV guy. So like I mean this in the most respectful way that I can say it. I don't genuinely care about like famous people's personal lives. Like I want to like kind of give that respect to where like your personal life is your own. I don't really necessarily need that. So if you're an actor or a musician or whatever, like or an athlete, like I'm perfectly fine with just consuming the content or the app or the area of expertise that you're in. And so with like a person like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like I'm perfectly fine without having to know like every single detail of Saint's life. But at the same time, I appreciate the fact that he was willing to sign up for a show like this and to give people a look. So like it was kind of that double-edged sword where it's like normally if it wasn't a Lions player in this, I don't know if I would have watched it. Because I did, unlike you, I didn't watch the quarterbacks one. Because like for that very reason, there was no one on there that I was interested in. So I was like, not gonna watch it. This one, watching a player that I'm very invested in. It's just like, okay, how much more are we going to find out about him than what we already know from covering the team? And again, like you gain that appreciation of like, man, like it takes a lot to be able to pull the curtain back and be like, hey, I'm going to expose you to, my family, my significant other, my competitive like mindset. Like that does take a certain level of vulnerability. So that was one of like the things that I walked away with. I'm like, this is just really cool of how this show is able to do that for you. And it's a big kudos to the players that sign up to do it.
Yeah, and I'm sure Netflix cuts them a nice little check. I'm sure that helps. And
Oh, 100%.
but yeah, I thought that a lot of the stuff that we learned about Amon-Ra was probably a little bit of a repeat if you've been a fan of the team for a while, because everyone knows about his draft night story. By this point, you've heard it a zillion times. But there was some new things, I that we're going to get into. But yeah, I think they do a good job. It was really well done, and the quarterback one was good. But I think, like I said, this is a step up, and I'm just a football junkie. So if you put it out there, I'm going to watch it. Like I've been watching the heck out of that Hard Knocks with the Giants, the off season,
Yeah.
eating it up like a just love it. I love it.
I do got to ask though, like, is it just me or does Amon Ra's draft night story become like more and more jaded the more he tells it? Like, I feel like when we first were hearing it after he got drafted, it was like, it wasn't a good night or I wasn't very happy. To like now he's being very candid where he was like, no, I was pissed. I hated it. It was the worst night of my life.
Yeah, and it's funny now that he's just letting it loose, because I think at this point he loves the Lions. He loves being here. He's an LA kid, obviously, but it was just funny. He's like, I did not want to go to the Lions, and I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she was like, "Dang, why did you say that?" And I was like, being realistic, we were just coming off of firing Patricia.
Yep.
We had just traded Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff and a ton of picks, so like, if you're a young receiver trying to prove yourself, this probably didn't look super attractive. But things are weird, and football's weird, and you end up with this beautiful marriage. And I think that's why he tells it so candidly now. He just lets it rip because he's like, well, shoot, I got paid. Everyone loves everyone, and let's, you know what I mean?
That's so now that you mention it, because like now I'm replaying like how he's talked about it. He even said specifically, so it kind of gives you a little bit of insight because it's something that went over my head when we were watching it. He wasn't a big fan of coming to play with Jared Goff at first.
I
Like
wouldn't
he
have been
was
either.
like he specifically does mention at one point that like they don't really have a quarterback, and it was just like whoa. Like
Yeah,
now that you like
shots.
replay it back, it's like, but it goes to show again his level of commitment to buying into this team and how much the team as a whole has kind of grown from the night he was drafted. It really gives a lot of credence when Dan and Brad come out and say like, him and Panay are cornerstone players, because when you look back at when this team started really changing directions, and yes, obviously I do know they went 3-13-1 the next year, but the culture definitely shifted after that draft class. It was a different mentality with the way that, players like Saint and Panay and Aleem were working day in and day out to try and build something new in Detroit, and Dan being the driving force behind it. So yeah, it definitely gives a lot of insight into that. But with that said, looking back at the series, when you look at the parts with Amon-Ra St. Brown, do you have a favorite moment from the series that really sticks out to you, or a big takeaway from the show?
Chalky answer, but I'm gonna go with the playoff win over the Rams. That was just,
Yeah,
they did a good job of capturing like the energy of that moment, and oh yeah, I thought that was pretty good. Like I really I really enjoyed that, and him dyeing his hair and talking about the atmosphere inside of Ford Field, and yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. What about you?
yeah, that moment never gets old. I think for me though, it's being able to again go back to what I was saying with the first, the last question that we were talking about, is seeing how like getting that inside look at how Saint connects with his teammates. Like I feel like we know that him and Khalif are super cool, right? From Khalif being there when he signed his contract with a couple other players to do the silly string. We know, I think we've seen a lot this offseason how close him and Ja are. But for me, like seeing how close him and JMO are was really cool, and seeing the dynamic between him and Jared, because I think on the surface, again, from what we can see as fans, the personalities look just drastically different. Like you pointed out, right? Saint's a Cali kid, JMO's from St. Louis, so like it's a completely different culture shock. But then you get to see these again, they're small moments, but they kind of really did leave a big impression on me of just like how much they talk in practice and how much like they do like champion each other. And it's one of those really cool things where it's like these two guys looking at JMO and Saint that are both, again, JMO's expected to one day ascend, and Saint's already there, but it's just like to see those two players connect, and the dynamic between them and how they're like getting an inside look at their relationship was really cool for me.
Bro, I'm so glad you brought that up because I died laughing. Like I had to pause it because when St. Brown was telling JMO that he went and he had to go to that school and like speak French,
Yeah,
and JMO was like, "You capping?" And for what y'all older people than us, what he means by that is, "Why you lying? Like you lying right now?" And St. Brown was like, "No," and you could just see JMO being like, "What?" Because like you might as well just tell JMO you went to the moon. You know what I
right.
mean? Like that's just it's just not something. I mean, me too. Like to be honest, like if you'd have told me, like yeah, I went to a school, I'd have been like, "What? You did what now?" Like
Right.
that's just not.
Yeah, for a
You and me are
whole
from
year.
the yeah. I'd be
Yeah.
like, well, hold on now, say what? So I thought that was hilarious. I had to pause it, bro. I was dying laughing.
It was, yeah, it was that was a really cool moment, again, between those two players. What about something that surprised you in this show? I know, like we said, as people who cover the Lions and we talk about the Lions on a somewhat semi-daily basis, there's very little that we don't already know. But was there anything from this show that you were like, oh, I actually didn't know that prior to watching this?
I knew. I think we knew that he was cool with, like, he was tight with his family. Like, family means everything to a lot of people, but like, it seems like that's Saint's like circle. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's his mom, dad, his Brooklyn, his girlfriend, Equanimous, Osiris, and then that's about it. Like he's got friends and stuff. He talked about that on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and Shannon Crowder and Fred Taylor. But
Mm-hmm.
I think his inner circle is definitely his family, and they mean a lot, man. I think that was probably my biggest surprise because I knew he was tight with them. I knew they, his mom being from Germany and everything else, but and then yeah, I didn't know that they were. There's a reason they are the way they are, right?
Yeah.
The three brothers, like they had John like pushing athletics, and then they didn't really talk about it a ton in the show, which I was a little bummed out about. But like the mom pushed, like they talked about the vocab words a little bit, I believe, but the
Yeah.
mom pushed them in the classroom, man. Like it was interesting. I think I'm confusing my content here a little bit, but I think St. Brown mentioned that on that Pivot podcast was all his, the football team was not in his classes. He was in like a
Yeah.
ton of he was in AP classes. So he was with the smart kids. But he was like, I made friends with them too. And I was like, this kid's just different, man. You can,
Yeah. To kind of piggyback off of that, like I think the scene in the show where he was doing like the interview with his parents, and
yep.
he got to give like a message to like both of his parents, And like you can see how drastically different, which I think it's the case for a lot of people, right? With their mom and their dad, like your relationship is, you love them both equally, but your relationship may be different.
Hmm.
And just seeing the way he conveyed his love and admiration to them both, and like I agree with you. I wish I had gotten to hear a little bit more about his mom, because in that moment when he's speaking to his mom, like giving a message to her through the camera, so he's not even talking directly to her, he still does it in German. And that's the one that he gets choked up on. That's the one he kind of like has to fight back some tears. So yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. I think another one for me um is going back to, I think it was the Raiders game where he had finding out that he had hand, foot, and mouth.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking before the show. I'm like, I don't remember if that was public knowledge. It may have been public knowledge that he was sick or that he was under the weather. I could not recall whether or not it was like announced before the game or even after the game that he had hand, foot, and mouth. And finding out like just how severe it was, the fact that it was all over his body, the fact that it was on his hands and his feet, and he still went out there and played, and not just played, but like balled out, Morgan. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy to think that for a player like him, like he was like it really is no days off for him.
No, man, he's a maniac. Like when they talked about that, I was like, oh my goodness. And like I know a little bit about that, hand, foot, and mouth. But when Brooklyn, his girlfriend, talked about him having blisters on his hands and his feet, and that football has got to hurt so bad. Like imagine like going to, like, I don't golf, but like imagine you go golf and you swing the club 1,000 times. You're going to have blisters. Your hands are going to be tender, and then you got
Yeah,
to go and catch a football that Jared Goff is rifling into some small windows. No, thank
and
you.
be
That
hit,
sounds
and still get hit
yeah,
too.
and
Like
getting
that's the other thing
hit.
that's crazy about it, is that like
Mm,
he went out there and played a full football game, right? Like he wasn't shying away from contact. He wasn't not being
no,
himself. To the point where, like I said, Morgan, like when that came up on the show, I was like, dude, I didn't even realize that he was sick that game.
no, I didn't either. Like I can't remember if we heard something about him being a little under the weather that week, but
'Cause I
it
think he missed
wasn't
the
in.
practice. Like I think he might have missed
Yeah,
the practice, and I think like, but like again, it was one of those things where it was like probably from what the media knew and from what the Lions were putting out there, like, oh, he'll be fine though. Again, probably not trying to tip their hand, not trying to make it. And it was on a short week too. I think that they had to play that Monday night game, so it was probably a lot of things like that where people just didn't overthink the fact that like, oh, there may be something actually wrong with him. Okay, so before we wrap up this video, because like I said, we could probably go on and on about all of these other different things, and again, we're just focusing on Amon-Ra St. Brown. There was so
hmm,
much more that went into this show, but you kind of hinted at it earlier. Like Netflix is seeming to figure out a formula for these types of series, and it definitely seems like they have like NFL fans' attention, and there's definitely, I think there's going to be more clamoring for these types of series. So if Netflix had to do another one and they had to pick a Lions player, who would you want them to kind of feature in their next go around?
if you guys watch our channel or you read a lot on the website, you probably know what I'm about to say. And it's offensive tackles, baby. I want to hear about Panay Sewell. That's my chief reason. That's definitely, my favorite player right now. And a chance to potentially be my favorite Lion of all time. We'll see how things shake out. I don't know, we'll put the cart before the horse here, but yeah, I would probably go tackles. That would be a really good. You'd have some. I know people think like, oh, offensive linemen, but trust me, there are some characters and some good personalities there too, Panay included. But what I think is going to end up going is one of your picks. So yeah, I want you to go first.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Brian Branch. I think BB is one of the more interesting defensive backs in the league. Obviously he's only going into his second year, but I don't know. I think in a group where DBs are typically seen as loud and characters and things like this, like BB just seems like very like to get like, I don't want to say together as if like the other ones aren't, but like he just seems like he has like this different type of maturity to him in the way that he approaches the position. And so he's someone um that I think would be interesting to find out more about him. And kind of in the same way that Amon-Ra is, where like Amon-Ra just kind of goes about doing his job, and you kind of want to know like, okay, well, how did a player like this come to be? I think Brian Branch is the same way, where Morgan, you and I have ran through the gambit with Brian Branch. Starter at Alabama for Nick Saban as a freshman. Like, how does a guy like that get to where he is in the NFL? And much like Amon-Ra, right? Overlooked, drafted in the second round, but yet has come into the league and has already kind of started that climb of being one of the best at his position. So I think Brian Branch would be good. I love your pick of Panay Sewell just as much though, because I think Panay, to the point, if we're talking about stories, if we're talking about giving like a look at what makes a player who they are outside of what they do on the football field or in the weight room, Panay seems like he has an awesome story. So many brothers that are in the league. He has a huge family. Like that's another one that'd be so interesting to see. I'm right there with you on him as well, though.
Yeah, and then you could tap into Panay, like, his journey from American Samoa to where they were in Utah, where they like ended up coming over to play football. So yeah, that'd be a good one. And I love the Brian Branch pick, man, because he's just a killer. Like I'm trying to think of like a personality that comparison for Brian Branch, but it's almost just like he just goes about his business in like a cold like you said, like Amon-Ra, like just like a shinobi, right? Like the man,
Yeah.
he's about his business. If you're in his way, he's just going to dispose of you. And if you're focusing on him in the like documentary style, like Netflix is doing, it'd be a chance to teach fans a lot, because if I'm having to guess, this man's about to move around this, like he's going to play every snap, but he's going to be all over because he truly can play linebacker to safety, which is incredible. Linebacker, safety, nickel, which is incredible.
Yeah. Maybe even outside corner in a pinch. Like if you really needed it, like, hey, we need you to go out there and play outside for like a couple snaps until, while Carlton Davis is getting his ankle taped up again. Just go out there and man the corner real quick.
Strongest outside corner in the game immediately.
Yeah.
Like I saw a pic of him the other day and I was like, oh dang, he'd been eating and lifting this summer. He looked big, bro.
Hey man. And I can't wait for it. And like, so if anyone from Netflix is watching this, first and foremost, try to get a Lions player on there every single season. You'll have way more views because Lions fans come in droves. And I just think we have some of the most entertaining players, whether it's Panay Sewell, Brian Branch. We didn't even mention Kirby Joseph. Kirby would be hilarious on a series like this.
And every time you have a line, exactly, you get Hutch, and then you get Dan Campbell. Like Dan Campbell bits. I'm glad they included Dan in a couple of those little scenes when he was talking, because give me more Dan Campbell content too, man.
Hey, yeah, let's do a coaches season. And let's get Dan, and then I genuinely don't care who else you pick. Dan and D'Amico Ryans. Those would be my only two asks. Get those two, and then whoever else you want to get, then yeah, go for it.
Gerard Mayo.
Oh, that would be a good one. Too. Just no McVay and no Shanahan.
No, I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it.
I feel like it'd be the most dry and boring. Yeah. I don't know. Shanahan would probably be a little interesting. McVay would be annoying. It'd be a little annoying.
Yeah, very annoying. Let's be real here. Everything about the Rams is annoying lately. So,
yeah. But
especially the fans.
Thanks, guys, for taking the time to come out and watch this. Let us know your comments, or let us know your thoughts in the comment section below on what you guys thought of the Netflix series Receiver. What were some of your favorite parts? Some that were related to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Feel free to throw in some other cool moments from players that are not Lions players as well. Like Morgan mentioned, Devontae Adams was in this series, George Kittle, Deebo Samuels, Justin Jefferson. A lot of great insight into all of these players' personal lives on the field and out off the field as well. So let us know what you guys are thinking in the comment section below. Also, if you're looking for any more content on the Detroit Lions, you can always check out prideofdetroit.com. There's always new articles being uploaded there on a daily basis, and we're constantly adding more writers to the staff. So you're getting even more insight, even more opinions from new people. So even more reason to go check out the website these days. And like always, if you're looking for any more video content, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and that's going to keep you tuned in to any time we upload a brand new video over here on the POD channel. So with all that said, I'm Meko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you in the next one.